Hey folks, I'm totally not named Dan, though you can call me that if you want, and today I've got another deck to show you that I've had quite some success with, but I'm going to bring in my buddy here, the Sheep, because it's actually had a lot more than I
Hey,
have.
hey, thanks for having me on in. Yeah, it's a deck
Hey,
I've been
Una.
playing for a good while now.
Well, I say a lot more than I have, sort of an interesting, different amount, because I played this deck a ton at locals, and the best I managed was joint first place with somebody. I never had a decisive victory, so I haven't shown it here till now. But I did get a decisive victory at a non-locals event where I won this, a really nice gold foiled print of Overhaul, who we'll be seeing in set 5. And this was specifically for winning the Sheffield Patriot Games monthly event that wasn't quite a provisional license exam or a regional license exam or whatever, but was the closest thing we had in the UK before the first of those. And after that, I did also manage to win some really nice foily cards, promos from the various provisional showdowns, which you saw in one of my previous videos. I'll link that down below. So I have had some serious success with this, but at the same time, my buddy Una here has had far more consistent success. Because, I mean, you won so many locals with this that people told you just weren't allowed to play it anymore, didn't you?
Yeah, it was very much a case of I kept winning with it, so if the chance of me playing any other deck, people were more than happy to help me get the missing pieces just so I would not play Mineta anymore.
Yeah, and that's who this is. This is Mineta. Specifically, Mineta 2. And it looks a little something like this. Let me zoom out so you can see the lot. There we go. Now, you will see this is specifically on a new playmat. This is the playmat I won becoming top 32, it says on it, in the UK or EU Nationals. But in reality, I came top 9, not quite top 8. So I find that really funny. There's no mat for top 16, so out of something like 53 people, I came top 32, so it doesn't even guarantee that I came in top half having this mat.
Yeah, that's true. Normally, a lot of these things do have a top 16 mat to them, even if it is just the same mat with the number 16 on.
Yeah, whereas they actually have a different mat for each one, and the top 32 one and the actual champion one are the two I like most. So I'm quite happy I didn't get the top 8 mat in that regard. But it is really weird that there isn't a top 16 one.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, because I like this mat so much, I'm going to be using this one over my old Ochiko one here on out. And yeah, we're just going to go over what cards are in here, I guess. This is specifically Mineta 2, who is once per turn, your rival adds 1 foundation from their stage to their card pool. And then if it's their turn, they get to build the top card of their deck face down. So on their turn, you blank their stuff. On your turn, you completely remove it. And both times, you stuff their card pool with something to make their attacks and blocks more difficult.
Yeah, which is just a very annoying thing for people to deal with, especially in the earlier parts of the game where you've only got a very few amount of foundations to it.
Yeah, and the other important thing is that Mineta is a 531, but he's not really, because every momentum he can discard reduces attack speed to 0, so his block modifiers barely matter, and draw him a card. So just he always has access to extra cards on his opponent's turn if he can attack and get attacks through. So this is very much a defensive character, but a going first character. If he doesn't get that attack turn before the opponent does, he struggles a bit, but at the same time, he still has all this defensive nonsense.
Yeah, it makes things a lot harder, but it's not exactly impossible to come back from that, but you definitely always want to go first with Mineta if you can.
So to complement that, we have a whole bunch of attacks. We have... And Creeping Vine Eruption is a throw. Sticky Ball Toss Tackle is a throw. Grape Rush becomes a throw if you lower its speed. You don't want to be lowering its speed with his own ability because that costs him momentum, which is basically costing him a block. But there are other ways to deal with that. Creeping Vine Eruption also, if the opponent does partial this throw or block it and take partial damage, it fetches you a perfect block for basically any zone in the whole Faith Shield over here, which is a +3 mid, so it's not exactly a great block in a normal deck. But remember, this is Mineta, all your opponent's attacks are 0 speed, so That's blocking on a 3 or a 4 if he's blocked before. And it flips the thing so it screws up combos, as does the adding the card to the pool. He gets to be very annoying like that.
Yeah, and because it does remove for the effect, it means that it's not even giving you one to your progressive blocks either.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the downside to that with Faith's Shield is it means you can't loop it. You only get 4 uses over the entire game. But, man, that's still 4 perfect blocks. Unless the game goes insanely long, that's not bad.
Yeah, I've not had a time where that's ever super come up. There's been times where I've needed one, but it's not like I've ever had all 4 removed and not been able to find one.
And then we also have Ice Storm here as just, it's a mid block with a breaker too. It's fantastic. It also says it can't be blocked by attack cards, so it makes the opponent blocking it harder. If you happen to have a whole bunch of momentum you don't need, powerful 3 on it. It gets big, it gets unblockable, it's real good as a finisher, potentially. You don't use it as a finisher very often. It's generally better to just chip away at your opponent. But we have pop-off step to specifically combo enhance a thing into your momentum, as long as that thing is Fury, so your Grape Rush, your Sticky Ball Toss Tackle. And then that feeds an immediate use of Ice Storm anytime you need to be hitting for 7.
Yeah, it's a real nice combo. You don't often use Ice Storm to attack, but it is a pretty decent attack to use to finish games off, which is always nice.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Breaker 2, it used to end turns, it doesn't so much now, but we can Breaker 2 twice. Because we got struggling with studies over here. So anytime your opponent manages to play a 3rd attack in a turn, which to be fair is not that often because you've already added a card to their pool, you then get to pick right back up your best block. Which will usually be the Ice Storm.
Yeah. So, why not have 2 lots of Breaker 2?
Yeah, exactly. And the pop-off step is generally quite bad in that regard, but if games go long, people do go into deadlock against you, at which point it's a 7-speed low.
It's a very annoying card often because low's not the most common of blocks, so a 7-speed one is normally pretty annoying to deal with.
Yeah, low used to be the least common, but actually I'm finding high is quite uncommon nowadays.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that, and then the Grape Rush is clearly the best attack because it stuns, it's got a 4-speed on base, it's an 8 damage if you get the trigger off, and it's an 8 damage throw specifically. It's got Fury, so it works with all your stuff, and it just draws you a card for using your character effect.
Yeah.
It
all works really nice together.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we got a 4-speed. We got a throw as a 2-speed, but I mean, you make that a 3, your opponent's going to have to commit something if they check a 3 anyway, because their block modifier is going to be 1 or more. And then, yeah, we got some decent speeds, but they get a lot better when we stick player body and classmate introductions on them. Player body just says your printed hand size is low enough, everything gets +1 speed, and then very occasionally you expend it to do the whole, your rival has more foundations, they lose one of them, and add it to their pool.
Yeah. It's often used at a final turn thing if I think, oh, this thing might not go for that kill, I can always add 1 to that by sacrificing my player body if I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, but apart from the attack you use it on, it's basically the same as just giving +1 speed.
Yeah.
It doesn't really add that much, although I guess it removes one of their foundations.
Yeah.
You mostly use this for the top ability, just the plus speed on everything.
Yeah.
Because it's a 5th and 6th classmate introductions, but without the condition. Classmate introductions punishes your opponent for not blocking you. You make it hard for your opponent to block you by putting the thing in pool and giving everything plus a speed. And then it's just got, if this is your first attack this turn, it gets +1 damage. So a little bit of extra damage on your Grape Rush, make it a 9 damage throw, so even on a partial it's a 5. A little bit extra damage on a Creeping Vine Eruption, doesn't do anything if you got 1, but if you got 2 of them, it puts the partial up to a 4, which is still less than 5, so it's still going to trigger the on-block effect.
Which is always real nice. Yeah, if I've had people not block Creeping Vine even when I've got it up to that 8 thing, just purely because they don't want me to have the Faith Shield for their turn.
Yeah, exactly. Creeping Vine Eruption is really very nice in terms of the mind games it provides.
Yeah, it's like it's not the best attack in terms of actually attacking damage. A 2 low 5 is alright, but just the way like if you try and block this, I'm gonna probably get my best block to my hand for your turn.
Yeah, and then between that and its own effects, to keep all toss tackle goes to a 5, so it's partialing, it becomes a 3. Because it's a throw, it's never going to do less than that.
Yeah.
So all of those are nice, and if you want to put more damage on, Creepy Realization will do that. But Creepy Realization will also take damage off your opponent. Generally, I find cards in your opponent's pool is not enough to equal the entire damage of their attack, but if you have 2 Creepy Realizations out, this can quite often zero one of them.
Yeah.
So that's real nice. And then speaking of zeroing things, we're obviously running 4 copies of Wall Cling, because what block deck doesn't?
Yeah,
Makes
it's
any
just so
partial
good.
block you draw into a perfect block, counters throws, counters all those always deals 1 damage moves. Just so nice.
It was an immediate 4 of just
Yeah. I mean, it is in almost every deck on Symbol, really. And then Precise Control, it's just, you play it down. There is no cost to playing it down, because you can always pick it back up if you need to. And it has Breaker 1. Yeah, the block mod's pretty crap. But, I mean, there's also just the fact that if you don't want to go into Deadlock, every time your opponent attacks you, you pick this back up and then play it again on the next turn. You never have to actually expend a card from your hand. You never actually have to progress the game state and go into Deadlock or attack them.
Yeah, which has had happened a fair amount because it is a more grindier deck, so you are more likely to have to play down some foundations to get up to near Deadlock.
Yeah, sometimes just staying on 10 foundations is great for this deck. Waiting till you draw that heavy attack hand and going in.
Mm-hmm.
And then Surviving the Final, such a Mineta card. Because, yeah, it gives -1 speed once per turn to the opponent's stuff to make stuff more blockable if he doesn't have access to his momentum. But on top of that, it also works on his own turn to -speed the Grape Rush, allow him to use the Mineta Enhance on it, make it an 8 damage throw.
Yeah, I've done a lot, and people are always just like, "Oh, why did you minus your own speed attack and then make it a throw +2 damage?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, that's why."
Yeah, and I mean, they only question it the first time because it is such an obvious part of his kit. Otherwise, if you read the cards, but
yeah. And the addition of player body does mean that you don't even have to keep that -1 speed because you can just put it back up again.
Yeah, exactly. Both player body and classmate introductions just put the speed back on it after you've given it that bonus. And then we just got Desperate Times, so that if the opponent draws cards like you draw cards, you just say commit stuff. And it's a 0 diff, so it's so darn free.
It's a 0, so you would probably play it just for the number anyway. But if it's got a good effect, why not run it?
Yeah, in Desperate Times, Surviving the Final, we both play both of them for the 0, and they just happen to do nice things. They're very much stats. Same sort of goes for Precise Control, though Precise Control has its situational uses.
Yeah,
Struggling with Studies is real good. And yeah, you might be able to tell this was designed as a set 2 deck. This was designed as a set 2 deck that I threw together in half an hour while waiting for round 1 to start. This is not a deck that I put a ton of effort into. And yet, it's just come out amazingly. It definitely wins games. It's definitely competitive. When set 3 came out, there was nothing that could be changed about this deck because all the cards it had were already optimal for it. The only thing that changed a little later on into set 3's life was the addition of these 2 player body.
It's an obvious add-in because speed is always nice. And we didn't have a free check, so having 2 copies of a free check isn't a bad thing because...
You mean a 3 diff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to run more than 2 copies of a 3 diff usually, because if you see 2 of them in your opening hand, that's you screwed because you can't play one of them. But 2 copies is nice. Seeing one of them is always great. If you can get 2 of them down, that's not bad either, but you have to get them down on separate turns, because otherwise you're checking against a 4 diff.
Yeah, and that's very risky going first.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real nice card, and it definitely had to go in here.
Yeah. But it's more harder to argue why not to include it than to include it.
Yeah, I mentioned that it was going in when I looked at the DLC before. It was one of the first things I thought was, this just goes in Mineta, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it does. It goes in Mineta really well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is the optimal set 3 build for it. and it still holds up in the meta perfectly well. People still hate it. But
Yeah.
going into set 4, we might have a few other things to look at with this.
Yeah, I've had a look at a few cards. There's not too many, but there is some sort of interesting cards to add into the deck.
So let's see what we're adding.
The first clear one to add for me was
Oh.
Low Blow.
Yeah, I was looking at Low Blow as well. Low Blow looks on its face like it might replace Sticky Ball Toss Tackle. But the problems with that are it's not Throw and it's not Fury.
Yeah.
It is another Breaker 2. It is another 3 low for 3. It is another if this isn't blocked, your rival commits 2 foundations, and you don't have to pay health for it. So it's a lot better in that regard. But it's just the fact that it's not guaranteed damage is kind of rough.
Yeah, that's the roughest part of it. It's like I was thinking to cut maybe a few of the Creeping Vines, but the other attacks complement the deck so when it's hard to argue taking them out for one that is basically mostly added for the Breaker 2.
Yeah. That's the thing. Low Blow, it's a fantastic card. As a block, as an attack, it's kind of crap. At best, it's a block bait because of that enhance.
Yeah.
So unless you're playing a lot of other lows, it's probably not worth it.
Another interesting card was Coda, actually.
Okay, you're interested in running Coda in this guy.
Just because obviously he has the response to commit after you completely block an attack. The next check to play a card gets -2, which is always going to be annoying for them. And obviously you're going to be completely blocking
It's
things a
Breaker
lot of
2,
the time.
except it comes with failing the check doesn't end the combat phase, so they can just fail whatever they want.
Yeah.
Lose a card from their hand.
And obviously a lot of your things are low, and we're playing this deck on water, so they +1 speed. For -1 health, the -1 isn't great, but we do have a lot of health, normally more than our opponent does. So sometimes it can be worth that 1 health for the 1 speed.
Yeah, if anything, this replaces Player Body. You have to lose the health for the speed, but you also get a sort of worse Breaker 2 on any full block.
Yeah, that was my think of cutting Player Body out for this.
Yeah, this definitely doesn't stay in with Player Body because it's, again, it's a 3-diff. You don't want too many 3-diffs in the deck. But the fact that every card in the deck is water means that Enhance does work for all our attacks. And I don't think I spotted that before, so yeah, I can see how this works. It's a consideration, but it's a choice between this and Player Body, and honestly, I would rather be able to commit for passing checks.
Yeah, and this is a lot easier to remove than Player Body because of the if you dealt 6 or more damage by an attack, it does just get destroyed.
So you have the creepy realization to specifically stop that, and you also have just the ability to block so much. So I'm not convinced that's going to be a problem too often, but when it is, it's going to really suck.
Yeah.
The other one that I was thinking would work in this is Do I Know You? It's a 1/5 twice foundation that has Enhance, Flip, discard 1 card, add 1 character card from your discard pile to your hand. So what this says is anytime you draw a card, if that card isn't a good block, you exchange it for a +0 mid.
Yeah, I can see it. I just feel like it would be a lot more working around for this card because obviously needing to add extra characters to the deck.
Yeah, but you don't need to add many. You just need to add, like, 2 maybe so that you can check them occasionally.
Yeah, that is true. But I found the deck list quite tight already, so having to add copies of this and the characters seems like a little too much changing for me.
Potentially. All of these are things to consider. None of them are definite inclusions, because this deck is just weirdly well optimized for a deck that I just looked at cards and threw together in half an hour. With no clue what I was doing in terms of the meta.
Yeah, but it just worked well with even cutting the 2 cards for Flyer, but we did a lot of back and forth on what to take out for that. And that was 2 cards for a very good card, so a situational card at best. It seems very hard to cut things from the deck list.
Yeah. That is very much how I feel about all of these. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Another one was stalking the prey for the response flip to -3 speed when they increase the speed. Granted, it is often a cat and mouse game between your ability with the momentum to make it 0. So if they do manage to make you use it before they've used all their speed buffs, it means you can still keep it very low. But the other part is the
Yeah.
other one
Yeah,
is a Toga Enhance.
Stalking her prey does very much punish them increasing speed, which is something this deck struggles with if they increase speed after you've minused speed. But, I mean, at the same time, A, be careful when you use your minus speed. And B, also, what comes out for that? Does that replace Creeping Realization?
I don't know, probably, but I don't feel it's better than Creepy Realization.
No, because Creepy Realization takes out an attack when you've run out of blocks, so it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah. Another one I did think of for a while was Teamwork, but I realized the Enhance can't really be used with our attack lineup because we don't normally have 5 or more, because a lot of things do in the deck have the same 3 symbols for at least their attacks. But at first I thought because of the F you block with each next block, it's progressive, which is nice, but a lot of times there's ways for us to get rid of our blocks from our card pool anyway.
Any of the Mineta cards in pool alongside either Creeping Vine Eruption or Ice Storm will trigger it. So you can very easily end up Ice Storming for, say, 12 with that. But
yeah, but I don't know what we would cut for it, and we want to play the long game. We're not going for these big, massive attacks, and
yeah, exactly. We don't want big damage. We want to force through multiple attacks.
Yeah, the only one we're doing the big damage with potentially is Ice Storm, which is normally late game where we can just get rid of a lot from our momentum for the powerful instead for that damage.
If anything, what Teamwork does is it makes our strategy more vulnerable to counterplay.
Yeah.
So I really don't think that fits. And likewise, I was looking at a Refreshing Slice, but Refreshing Slice, while it's great for shutting the opponent down and it's great stats, it also says discard 1 momentum. And that just sucks.
Yeah, that was my thought. Oh, this seems real good. And I saw if it would discard 1 card, it would be honestly fine.
Yeah.
But the momentum is so annoying because that's our key way to make sure we do block them is having momentum.
Ultimately, with this deck, a card in momentum is essentially 2 cards in hand, almost.
Yeah.
Because it's 1 to stop the speed and 1 to actually do the block. So yeah, momentum is way more valuable than hand cards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure this deck changes still, to be honest. And
yeah,
it probably gets slightly more powerful opposition, so it's probably going to be doing a little worse than it used to be. But this is a good defensive deck.
But obviously, it's better and worse, and this often comes with how the meta is at the time. Obviously, if say the meta for set 4 is playing these one-off big attacks, maybe only playing 2-3 attacks a turn, but they're very big damage attacks, that works in Mineta's favor. But if there's a lot of small little attacks, that's worse for the deck. So it really just depends how the meta shapes up, really.
The thing he really struggles with is the many throws, which I'm pretty sure is what Muscular's game plan's going to be. At least until such time as they can pull off the ridiculous Determined Victory Smash combo.
Yeah.
At which point it's just infinite attacks, and so Mineta just crumbles instantly.
Yeah, and because Muscular will be a very tough match for this because of that fact. Because you're both playing the long game, but they definitely have the better long game than you do.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of damage they can put on cards is completely irrelevant in this matchup, interestingly. The only reason it would matter is that it allows them to play that Determined Victory Smash infinitely to close out the game. But it's the throws that they will be playing to get there that really threaten Mineta.
Yeah, which I might play it back a few times just to see how the deck faces against the meta, but I am still liking the other decks I'm playing, and there are a few characters in set 4 I'm looking to play, so we'll see if he does get any more love from me in set 4.
Yeah, I do like the way Mineta's working with that matchup, just because it's forcing both players to play the deck differently to how it would normally play, but still in a very legitimate way.
Yeah.
It's forcing Muscular to be a throw character. It's forcing Mineta to go in fast.
Yeah.
Neither one is how either of them normally work, but
yeah,
it's a lot of fun. I mean, my favorite thing with this deck was the game where I just randomly cycled 9 attacks out, during my first cycle, and then the entire thing just became, how can I mill my opponent? How can I just block forever till they run out of deck? And ultimately, I didn't win that, but it came down to my last check.
Yeah, I've had similar cases with that where just because you can't attack doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of the game purely because of how defensive you can be.
Yeah, I had one matchup where I didn't see an attack until turn 6 and still won.
Yeah, I've had the same thing where it was definitely a very uphill battle, but once we were able to get going again, we were able to put it back in my favor.
And this is the thing, Mineta loses a lot of health very quickly, potentially. But he also stabilizes on like 5 if he needs to, and then just closes out games slowly and wins.
Yeah, I think we've seen that many times where I would be on, say, 3-4 damage to die, and I was going for another 5-6 turns.
Yeah.
Especially once against Togayu, I was on the 1 health left, but because they all said couldn't kill me for that -1 health, I was just there, just stopping every attack, and managed to win that out with 1 health for multiple turns.
Yeah, that said, though, when I got this Portrait of Overhaul, that was specifically me going 5-0, and most of those matches, I finished within the first 20 minutes, and then just went off, had a bit of food in the cafe, had a chat with whoever else finished early, just had some really nice conversations with my opponents.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
This can be a weirdly quick deck, despite being so defensive.
Yeah, which seems counterintuitive. Being a defensive quick deck seems very oxymoron-y.
Yeah, but it's their short turns, and they're not... They are interactive turns, but they're also very quick, not high decision-making turns a lot of the time.
Yeah.
There are some very clear lines of play in this deck.
And often there's a lot of thinking for you on your opponents, and they look at you like, what will I block with first? Do I use this now or then?
Yeah, but it's all thinking while your opponent's making their decisions, so there's not any waiting around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is a surprisingly, honestly, very nice to play deck. I like this.
Yeah. It's why I didn't really get bored of the tick. It was more, I wanted to change because people at locals wanted me to change, and
yeah,
I was an annoying character for them to play. And if I've got other characters I want to play, I'm not going to play the one people find annoying just for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I kept playing him was because I wanted to show off this deck that had clearly shown it was good enough, but wasn't quite getting that win for me. And I wanted to be able to have that win under my belt when I showed it to you all.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only reason I kept playing it.
And then it just seemed that as soon as I picked it up there from borrowing your one for a while, I just managed to get those wins with it.
Yeah, I mean, it took you a week or two to learn it, but once you had the idea of the deck down, it was just consistent wins.
Yeah, and a lot of that, this was one of the very first decks I picked up for the game. I was very much a new player in those sort of games.
This was your second deck after Ochako. Ochako being one that you liked the idea of, but Ochako is a real puzzle deck. Ochako is just draw your hand, think for 5-10 minutes, play your hand.
Which was very daunting, so I wanted something a bit slower, more defensive, so I could learn the game a bit more easy, and this was the perfect thing to do. There was a lot of good decision-making you needed to do to win, but it was a lot less than having to think for 5 minutes before I played my first time with Ochako.
Yeah, this is actually...
At this, I do kind of want to go back to Ochako, but she's not had enough new stuff for me to go back to her.
Well, I mean, I don't think she was the deck that won Nationals, but if not, she was very close. I'll have to dig up the Nationals list, because Ochako 1 is a lot more impressive than I gave her credit for. And I mean, she was still a winning deck I featured on this channel. I'll link you to that in the description.
Yeah, I guess I may have cut her out too soon, so...
Yeah, I think it's worth you bringing her back, but probably not till after one of us has wins with your Tiger deck, because that is looking so much fun.
It's because I've come second so many times. Like, we've had that weird joint first with, like, 3 of us, but I don't super count that because there were
Yeah.
so many of us with the same record.
And that's what I
If I
had with
wanted-
Mineta, right?
Yeah,
You will get that victory because the deck is good enough for it. It's just you
Yeah.
keep randomly coming against somebody who counters it.
yeah. But I will get this before. I will not retire Tiger until we get that top.
And yeah, the 1 week you either get a slightly better build and everything just works, or you just randomly don't come against that person who hoses you, Tiger will win.
Yeah.
Tiger is a darn good character. I'm just curious what set 4 brings for him, but
Yeah.
we'll look at that in the future.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thanks for joining me for this one. And yeah, this is a weirdly new player friendly deck. Would recommend.
Yeah, and it's really cheap as well because it's all the only real expensive card is Ice Storm, which wasn't too much either.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of why I'm running 3 Ice Storms rather than 4, but mostly just the ratios work out way better like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was never super wanting the 4th. I was fine at 3.
Yeah, and on your attack turns, you usually don't want to see it.
Yeah. It's a card you want to block with, but if you don't block with it, you can still maybe use it if you draw, say, a second one. You can one attack, and you've still got one good in your hand for blocking their turn.
Yeah. Anyway, see you all next time, everyone. Bye.
Bye.